Welcome to the first visual hymn note. I'm Rebecca Abbott. I help people connect to their musical heritage through exploring music and text. Today we'll be looking at SCHMUECKE DICH, SCHMUECKE DICH, known sometimes in English as Deck Thyself, my soul, with gladness, and sometimes as Soul, Adorn Yourself with Gladness. With the permission of Concordia Publishing House, I'll be using the latter version, found in the 2006 Lutheran Service Book at number 636. I'm going to give you a feel for this hymn by singing the first of 8 stanzas. Then we'll look at the overall structure of the text and the general poetic structure of each stanza. Finally, we'll work on memorizing that first stanza together. Now, as I sing, why don't you think about to whom this hymn is addressed? Who gets the imperative verbs? Soul, adorn yourself with gladness. Leave the gloomy haunts of sadness. Come into the daylight splendor. There with joy your praises render. Bless the one whose grace unbounded this amazing banquet founded. He, though heav'nly, high and holy, Deigns to dwell with you most lowly. So, even though we sing this in church, it is not addressed to God at all, at least not at the beginning. It is also not addressed to each other, the congregation. This is a very personal song, sung by yourself, to yourself, but in the second person. You are preparing yourself to receive the Eucharist by telling your own soul what to do. Adorn, leave, come, render, bless. This English translation has only 8 stanzas instead of the German's original 9. However, they still follow the same general pattern. First 3 stanzas addressed to soul. 4th stanza moves from second person soul to first person I. That is important. It means my soul paid attention in the first 3 stanzas, so that I am now enacting what I told my soul to do. And this song then is a prayer being fulfilled before our very eyes. Do not leave out the 4th stanza. It is the transitional stanza, the pivot. It moves us into the last 4 stanzas, which are all addressed to Jesus. We can address Jesus at this point because our soul has obeyed the imperatives of the first stanzas and has moved into a place where it is where I am now face to face with Jesus. Beginning with the 5th stanza, we are in the second person again, this time addressed not to the soul, but to Jesus. At the end of the 5th stanza, I ask Jesus to help me receive him. And finally, at the end of the 8th stanza, I ask Jesus to receive me as a guest into heaven. From earthly Eucharist to heavenly feast. We have a stronger hope that this last half of the song will become reality because we have just experienced the first half of the song becoming reality. So much for the overall structure. We can see now how that first stanza fits into the whole of the piece. But before we work on memorizing it together, let's look at the general structure of each stanza. We will do this through exploring the 2 most important poetic elements, meter and rhyme scheme. The meter consists of 8 syllables per line with 8 lines per stanza, and it is trochaic, which means the accent is on every other beat, starting with the first syllable of each line. Soul, adorn yourself with gladness, leave the gloomy haunts of sadness, come into the daylight splendor, there with joy your praises render. This is a great meter for grabbing people's attention because it begins with an accent. In this case, we are trying to grab our soul's attention. If we begin with a strong beat and we have an even number of syllables, this means that each line is going to end with a weak beat, in this case with 2-syllable rhymes. Gladness, sadness. Splendor, render. Bounded, founded. Holy, lowly. This gives a sense of tapering off to each line. But because the rhymes come in pairs, with a rhyme scheme of A, B, B, C, C, D, D. That tapering off is countered by our growing sense of anticipation at the end of each odd-numbered line. Once we sing that first line, we want to keep singing to find its pair. When we finish the third line, we are fairly confident that the fourth line will reveal a second pair. So the rhyme scheme keeps a sense of delight and discovery, even if the meter draws each line to a gentle close. Next time, God willing, we'll explore some musical elements. But now that you know a bit about the overall structure and the general structure of each stanza, you are ready to work on memorizing that first stanza. Let us sing without any self-criticism and enjoy that first word. Soul. Nice sibilant S. And go immediately to very rounded lips on O. Soul. Okay, here comes the first imperative. Adorn. Soul, adorn yourself with gladness. Do you remember the rhyme for gladness? Leave the gloomy haunts of sadness. Let's sing those 2 lines together. Soul, adorn yourself with gladness. Leave the gloomy haunts of sadness. We leave the gloomy haunts to come into the daylight's splendor. Come into the daylight's splendor. There with joy your praises render. That's the first half of the first stanza. Let's review. Soul, adorn yourself with gladness. Leave the gloomy haunts of sadness. Come into the daylight's splendor. There with joy your praises render. The second half of the first stanza has a different melody. It begins to climb. Bless the one whose grace unbounded, this amazing banquet founded. All right, connecting the first half to the second half, we render praises by blessing Jesus. Let's start with come. Come into the daylight's splendor. There with joy your praises render. Bless the one whose grace unbounded this amazing banquet founded. We continue with 4 H's. H is voiceless, so you have to prepare the pitch for the next vowel. It does not work to start an sound and then think about which pitch you'll need for the vowel, like he. No. If we need this pitch, he, then we sing this pitch, even with the in front of it. And the 4 words that need their pitch prepared are he, heavenly, high, holy. He, though heavenly, high and holy, deigns to dwell with you most lowly. And that is a beautiful conclusion, with the 8th line answering the 7th line in contrast, from high to lowly, reenacting the incarnation. Before we sing the whole stanza, let's sing just those 2 lines again. He, though heavenly, high and holy, deigns to dwell with you most lowly. Okay. If you mess up, just sing nonsense syllables to keep the line going, then come back with the words when you can. First, stanza. Soul, adorn yourself with gladness. Leave the gloomy haunts of sadness. Come into the daylight's splendor. There with joy your praises render. Bless the one whose grace unbounded this amazing banquet founded. He, though heavenly, high and holy, deigns to dwell with you most lowly. Today, we looked at the overall structure of SCHMUECKE DICH in the movement from 2nd person imperative to the soul, 1st person I, 2nd person imperative to Jesus. The movement from preparing ourselves to receive the Eucharist on earth to asking Jesus to receive us to his Eucharist in heaven. Then we looked at the general structure of each stanza, especially how the trochaic meter commands our attention, and how the paired double rhymes treat us gently while luring us on. Finally, we worked on memorizing the first stanza. I'm Dr. Rebecca Abbott, and this has been a visual hymn note. I am available to speak at your church or seminary on a Saturday afternoon, as long as I'm back to my home church by Sunday morning. Thank you for watching. Never stop singing.